I think that a successful future in the 21st century will involve progress both in the form of globalization and technology. And I always think we should differentiate the two very sharply. I always think of globalization as copying things that work. It's basically you can sort of think of it as on an x-axis. It's horizontal, extensive progress. It's basically China is the paradigm example today. It has a very straightforward plan, just needs to copy things that are working. It can skip a few steps here and there. That's what China needs to do. And then I think technology I always put sort of on a y-axis. It's vertical, intensive progress. It's doing new things. It's going from 0 to 1. And I think when you sort of think about the history of the last few centuries, there have been eras of technology, there have been eras of globalization, but they don't necessarily sort of overlap. And the 19th century was a period when you had both tremendous globalization and tremendous technological progress, sort of the era 1815 to 1914. 1914, World War I starts, globalization goes massively in reverse, the world becomes far more disconnected in the ensuing decades, although technology broadly continues to progress on many different fronts. 1971, Kissinger goes to China, globalization starts again, and although technology actually slows down in all areas outside of software. So I think we've had continued innovation in software, which has been very lucrative because of the microeconomics. In the last 40 years, we've had much less innovation in many other areas of technology, biotech, transportation, space travel, all the other areas people would have talked about in the 50s and 60s. And so the 20th and early 21st century had a first period that was about technology, but no globalization, and then a second period since 1971 that was about globalization, but more limited technological progress. And this change is reflected in the different way that we describe the structure of the world. In the 50s and 60s, you would have divided the world into first world and third world countries. The first world was that part that was seeing accelerating technological progress. The third world was sort of permanently screwed up. Today we would talk about the developing and developed worlds, which is a pro-globalization dichotomy. The developing countries are those countries that are copying the developed world and are effectively converging with them. But it is also implicitly an anti-technological way to describe the world, because when we say that we live in the developed world, we are implicitly saying that we're living in that part of the world where nothing new is going to happen, where things are done, finished, stagnant, and where the younger generation should have reduced expectations from their parents for the decades ahead. And I think this is a conception of our country and of the developed world that we should resist very, very strenuously. And so I would end with the